Welcome to Lesson 7. Avoid common mistakes. Now, throughout this course so far, you've learned many things about fluency and pronunciation, grammar, and more recently, you learned about structures for all the parts. And in today's lesson, you're going to learn how to avoid the most common mistakes that participants use when taking the IELTS exam. Let's find out what they are. Hello, it's me again. My name is Jonathan, and I'll be guiding you through lesson number 7. The main outcome from today is you're going to get a confidence boost because you're going to gain the knowledge and self-assurance of what you need to do in the exam and what you need to avoid. So throughout this lesson, you're going to find out all the common pitfalls that many students make, and you need to make sure that you are not making these types of mistakes. As always, we'll begin with a warm-up task. There are 4 questions on your screen now. What do you know about things you should do well in the exam? And can you list any behaviours or practices you believe you should avoid in the exam? Once you've gone through those 4 questions, please come back to the video. Welcome back to the video. As I've told you time and time again, I do want you to be very proactive with these tasks. So make sure that you're writing them down, or you're recording your answers, or you're having a discussion with someone else. Anything that you do will help you do this task and all the tasks throughout the IELTS course. So how did you reflect on task number 1? What are some of the key things you should do and things you should avoid? Have you ever taken any advice from other people who have taken the exam? And finally, how confident do you feel? My goal as a teacher is to make you feel more confident by the time this lesson ends. Let's do this. First of all, I want to start by giving you some do's, things you must do during your IELTS speaking exam. First of all, my advice is to stay calm and composed. Try to pretend talking to a friend instead of an examiner. Try to remember to breathe and to stay calm, and you will be fine, and this will definitely help you a lot to calm those nerves of yours. Utilize the transition words. So there's a lot of transition words that we use, cohesive devices, firstly, secondly, finally, on top of that, however, moreover, on the other hand. These words are amazing for the way that you transition between ideas and in between questions. So make sure you utilize it to the best of your ability. In every single question, I want you to offer detailed examples. That goes from part 1 to part 3. Always providing evidence and explanations and examples. This is what you need to do. Add a lot of depth to your answer. Use a variety of vocabulary throughout. So as we did in the vocabulary exercise in a previous lesson, we looked at collocations and idioms and phrasal verbs, advanced vocabulary. In the next lesson, we're also going to talk about topic vocabulary as well. Showing the examiner your range of vocabulary is something that you must do in order to get those higher grades in the IELTS speaking exam. And my final advice is something that I live by. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. The fact that you're going through this course shows me that you are preparing to the best that you possibly can. That's really good. But not just this course. Individual self-study is very important as well in between lessons. The more preparation that you'll do, the more likely that you're going to get the grade that you want in IELTS. Now here are some don'ts. And in these don'ts we're going to go through in this lesson. They are: don't memorize responses, don't repeat words excessively, don't speak too fast, don't hesitate excessively, don't go off topic, and don't use overly complex vocabulary. We're going to talk about all of them in more detail throughout this lesson, and that is our focus for today. Let's begin with a very common one. Don't memorize responses. It's a very common thing that a lot of students do, and the examiner can see straight through it. So it's memorizing responses, perhaps writing answers down and saying the same answer no matter what the question is. And you don't really fully understand and consider the entire question, so you may be missing out on key points. Just a few examples: describe your hometown or discuss a memorable event. Maybe students have a already pre-written answer for describing their hometown, and they'll give that answer no matter what, even if the question is a slight variation of that. It is important to avoid, because your ability to communicate spontaneously and coherently is what the examiner is looking for. If you sound like you're talking from memorization, the examiner will spot it and perhaps will not score you as highly. Here is an example of memorizing answers. A question may be, what are some activities you can do in your hometown? A memorized response may not focus on the activities, but instead talk generally about their hometown. Here is an example answer. I come from Springfield, a small countryside town. It's rich in history with preserved landmarks. Cozy shops and cafes create a friendly, relaxed atmosphere. I enjoy its tranquility and natural beauty. Now the answer is fine, but the issue is you haven't talked about any activities. Perhaps you could say that cozy shops and cafes are an activity, but I don't believe it is an activity the examiner is hoping for you to sort of talk about. So I do think there's an issue with the question not being correctly answered here. You're talking more about the hometown than you are about the activities in the hometown. Time for another task about memorizing answers. Look at the 3 questions on your screen now. Why do you think some people choose to memorize responses? Have you ever tried memorizing answers for a test or exam before, and did it work for you? And how can you prepare effectively for IELTS speaking without resorting to memorization? Once you've answered those 3 questions, you can come back to the video. You may be thinking, I don't memorize answers, I never have, and I never will. And if that's you, that's absolutely fine. But there are a lot of you out there that will memorize answers. And I do try to, avoid doing this type of thing if I were you. Okay? But how did you answer those questions? How did you reflect? Let's move on to the next common error. Our next common mistake is to not repeat words excessively. Repeating words again and again involves the same words or phrases frequently. You might say the same words 2 or 3 times in the same answer, or use it even more frequently throughout the test. For example, you may say the word interesting 2, 3, 4, 5 times throughout your IELTS speaking test, and perhaps you should use other words, synonyms of those words, in order to improve your score. And that's why it's so important to avoid. Showcasing a wide range of vocabulary will really help your vocabulary and fluency score in the IELTS speaking test. So let's not repeat too many words too many times. Here is an example of repeating words excessively. A question may be, do you like to study history? A response would include some phrases or words that are repeated too many times. In the example answer, I'm interested in history because it's incredibly interesting to explore historical events and the lives of people who lived in the past. It's an interesting subject. Now here we have interesting repeated twice and interested as well. We want to use synonyms for those words to showcase to the examiner that you have a wide range of vocabulary. Here is task number 3, and it's about word repetition. We have 3 questions on your screen. The first 2 questions are asking for you to explain about overusing certain words and how do you think it affects the quality of your response. The second question is asking you about strategies or techniques to avoid repeating words over and over again. And finally, let's try a synonym exercise. I used the word interesting in the previous answer 3 times. Can you find 2 or 3 synonyms that the speaker could have used instead? Once you have finished these 3 tasks, come back to the video. Welcome back to the video. How did you do with questions 1 and 2? What were your thoughts? What strategies do you have? Perhaps learning as much vocabulary and practicing as much as possible would probably be the best strategy in my opinion. And for number 3, are you able to think of maybe 2 or 3 words that can replace the word interesting? If you did, that's fantastic. Perhaps you could use words like fascinating, intriguing, compelling, absorbing, words we have mentioned earlier on in the course. Well done. Our next common mistake is that students speak too fast. You may be on the opposite side, but we'll talk about that later. Talking rapidly will impede your articulation and the comprehension from the examiner. It would certainly neglect your pronunciation, and you will stumble over words, and the examiner may struggle to understand you and therefore will grade you lower in your speaking exam. It can affect your fluency score, your pronunciation, and it is a key part of the key assessment criteria. So remain calm, as I said before, and try to speak at the right pace. This is vital for your speaking test. As I said, you may not be speaking too fast, but you may be doing the opposite thing, and that is hesitating too much. Remember, hesitating is when you have lots of long pauses, too many long pauses in between words, or you may use repetitive fillers like This tends to happen when students forget words, so this increases the chances of prolonged silences. It's so important to avoid because it impacts your fluency and coherency score. So when you want your responses to be engaging, you got to speak at the right pace, whether that is slowing down what you're saying or trying to avoid those long pauses. Now, this is a great task for you to do for speaking too fast and hesitation. As I said, many students face either one of these two problems. I want you to practice now doing questions 1 and 2 on your screen. The first one, record yourself speaking for 1 minute on any topic without rushing. Listen to the recording and note any areas where you spoke too fast. Share your findings with a partner if possible, or self-reflect. For number 2, choose a short passage from a book or article and read it out loud, focusing on enunciating each word clearly. Record your reading and compare it with the original text to identify places where you hesitated or stumbled. Once you have finished these 2 tasks, please come back to the video. You should give yourself a lot of time to do this, to record them, and also to reflect on how you did and make corrections where needed. Welcome back. How did you do? Were you speaking too quickly? Did you hesitate a lot? Or were you able to avoid doing that? Perhaps now you're more conscious about it and it will help you trying to not do it during your speaking test. But do this as many times as you want. Find more things to talk about or find more things to read. The more you do this, the better it will be. I hope it helped you. Well done. Don't go off topic. This is another common thing that many students do. They are given a question and they go off topic and they talk about something the question wasn't actually about. Going off topic can lead to a loss of coherence and can affect your score negatively. Students may be asked about their favourite book, for example, but talk about a movie instead, or talk about reading in general instead. It's important to avoid this because it indicates a lack of control over the conversation. It can make your responses less effective. Here is an example of going off topic. A question may be, do you enjoy outdoor activities? A response would maybe answer the question with a yes, then go on to explain something else. You may still score highly in grammar, the vocabulary and the pronunciation, but your fluency score could weaken. An example answer, yes, last summer I went on a trip to the mountains with my family. We stayed at a lovely cabin and the weather was amazing. The cabin had a fireplace and we spent our evenings playing board games and having cozy family time. It's not a bad answer when you look at the vocabulary and the grammar. However, it's not really talking a lot about outdoor activities. You're talking more about the trip to the mountains. That is a different answer to the question. Let's try task number 5, staying on topic. There are some questions on your screen and 3 answers to each question. I would like you to read the questions and the answers and choose the answers that go off topic. Please choose the answers that go off topic. Once you have finished reading and answered, please come back to the video. Welcome back. How did you find this task? Let's have a look at question number 1. So there's only one correct answer for question number 1. The one that is off topic is B. I love cats and I have one myself. It's not really a hobby, so this can be a little bit of confusion. Talking about painting and playing the guitar is a hobby, but cats, I wouldn't necessarily count them as hobbies. For question number 2, there are 2 answers that go off topic, B and C. B is talking more about the brother and his job and the fact that he works for a foreign company, and C is talking about cuisines from all around the world. They're not really answering the question about traveling to other countries. Well done if you got the answers correct to those 2 questions. Our next common error is using overly complex vocabulary. It's great to use vocabulary and advanced vocabulary, but some students find themselves in a position where they're using vocabulary they don't know so well, and they're using it incorrectly. So using intricate and convoluted words, which is advanced vocabulary for basically difficult vocabulary, this can stop the clarity and this will impede your answer and it will disrupt a natural communication. You might try to use those words to impress the examiner, and the examiner may be impressed if you use it correctly. Sometimes the words they are advanced and complicated, but they're not appropriate for the answer. It is important that you avoid this because examiners, they want clarity in your answers, they want you to be very clear and they want to understand you. But if your vocabulary is too advanced, it may impede the answer that you're given. Here is an example of overly complex vocabulary. A question might be, do you enjoy outdoor activities? A standard answer would be, yes, I enjoy outdoor activities. Hiking and camping are my favorite ways to connect with nature. Nothing wrong with that answer. This one is a more complex answer. Indeed, I derive gratification from immersive engagement in pursuits, which facilitate my communion with the natural world. Now, I enjoy outdoor activities may sound more simple, but it's better to say that than deriving gratification. The examiner may be like, why are you saying deriving gratification? The word's too formal and complex and advanced for a simple question like, do you enjoy outdoor activities? It doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound appropriate. Other expressions like immersive engagement and facilitate instead of something else like help would be a lot better. Here are some questions for you to answer on overly complex words. Look at questions number 1 and 2. Once you have read both possible answers, choose the one that you believe is correct. Once you have finished, come back to the video. Now, do not get me wrong. I want you to use advanced words, complex words in your IELTS exam. But remember, you don't have to do it for every single answer. And when you do it, it has to be used appropriately. Now, looking at these two answers, I hope you've all got this correct. B is the correct one because it's a lot more simpler, makes more sense, and we're not using fancy words for no reason. Now, for question number 2, the better answer is B once again. Using verbs like terminate and bestow and fabricate. They are acceptable if you use them in the right way, perhaps maybe once during the entire exam. But B is going to be the more common words that you're going to see a lot more often, and there's no harm in using those words. Just remember what I said earlier about repeating vocabulary. It's important you have a wide range of vocabulary, so you don't use these words over and over again, but that doesn't mean you can't use them. Just don't repeat them too much. So there we have it. That was all the common mistakes that I wanted to alert you about, which I think are the most common ones that students make. So have a bit of self-reflection at the end of this lesson. How did you do? What mistakes are you currently making? And the ones that you are, try to address them in the ways that we talked about in this lesson. Now for self-study, of course, I always want you to watch some online content. See if you can identify some of the common mistakes mentioned today if you watch real tests on YouTube, for example. Review your notes and put everything into practice, as always. It's always a pleasure to teach you. I hope these common mistakes that you're now informed of will help you a lot and make you try to avoid them. Well done today. I will see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye for now.